Alright, let's see. There we go. So this is match one of a league that I just started this morning. So here, before we get started, I should go into a little bit of what I did. Um, so the more recent list that I'm testing right now, I'm not sure exactly if it's the best build, but I'm working on it. Um, the I looked up what my opponent's name, and the last time they played, according to MTG Goldfish, they were on blue-red control. So using that information, I thought this hand was pretty good. I'd have the early disruption, and then Profane Tutor to search for whatever I needed to. I know I probably didn't have to worry about my opponent having a fast clock, so I didn't worry about ensnaring bridge. My main concern was trying to assemble the lock and possibly using Urza's Saga in order to act as a threat or get bridge. The good thing about Urza's Saga is my opponent wouldn't be able to counter it. So yeah, so their top card was Hall of Storm Giants, which further implied that they were on control. Um, and then so Duress, and this is the hand that I see. Here I choose to take Flame of Anor because that's the biggest threat they have. Orcish Bowmasters is a very slow clock, so really I'm not worried about those. Um, and then the only other card I'm really worried about is Preordain because that'll let them dig 3 cards deep. I'm kind of hoping that they don't really know what I'm on, so I'm hoping they'll fire off the Preordain before they figure it out, and then from there I hopefully should be able to assemble some sort of lock. Um, I typically like to keep this open so that I can keep track of what I have and have not seen. I do make a mistake here. I use Bobble to see the next card, and really I should wait because they might pop Tarn, and that'll mean the information that I get from Bobble is not necessarily accurate. So they didn't do the Tarn, and they are firing off the Preordain early. So now we have seen the Hall, Dupe, and Preordain. Also, if we look, they did 2 to the bottom, so we know that Steam Vents is not there. So again, I should have waited on the Bobble. I made a mistake there. I should have waited on the Bobble until afterwards. So now they have 1 unknown card, and they're going to get another one. Good thing is I drew a second Profane Tutor. Um, and I am using the bubbles early so that they can't hit me with more damage with Bowmasters. Um, so I have half the Lantern Lock, not including Bridge here. So I elect to suspend a tutor to try to get the other half. And again, my opponent still hopefully does not know what I'm on. So there's a Watery Grave. And I figure they're keeping up mana for their Bowmasters and or for a counterspell. Uh, go ahead and play out the Pixis. So they have 2 unknown cards at this point. And there's Bowmasters. I'm still not too worried about Bowmasters. With the 2 tutors, hopefully I can get a Lantern and a discard spell or whatever, depending on what I draw. There's Spire Bluff. So they have 3 unknown cards and a very slow clock. Excuse me. Sorry. So yeah, I elect to get the Lantern first because they have a slow clock. And I do draw the Duress, which is great. So I'm going to do the Duress first. That way I can clear the way for a counterspell of a counter so I can make sure that Lantern lands. I'm still not worried about threats. So I grab the only card to get here is Lightning Bolt. So they still have a very slow clock. And now, because of this, I know that chances are I have the game because I'm going to get bridge next turn off of that Profane Tutor, and I just have to make sure that they draw a dead card. Yep. So here comes the other Bowmasters. Oh, I can get rid of this stuff. There we go. Yeah, not too worried about the bolts. Um, I don't really want them to have the bolts. I don't want to take too much damage. Um, and I did tap wrong there. I took 1 damage that I didn't have to take because I tapped wrong for the lantern. Um, so go to get the bridge. Okay. Now note that I don't play the bridge yet because I don't want to have, if they slip this through somehow, I don't want them to have destruction for it. And I know they probably don't have discard. At the best, they have counter. They are also running light on threats now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. And now a smart opponent will pop this during the upkeep because a lot of players don't have the stop on their upkeep. Um, my opponent wants this flame though, so of course they're not going to pop it yet. So what now, because they didn't do anything, I'm going to force them on the Scalding Tarn. They're going to choose not to shuffle, and then I'm going to mill it. And there's the other Scalding Tarn. So they do still have a Tide Binder in their hand, so now I got to be careful about how I use the Pixis. So play the bridge now while I still can. Play the lantern, and I'd prefer to use the lantern to draw the Tide Binder. I don't have to play anything or resolve anything right now. So I'm not worried about their counter spells at all. Yeah, they do that during the end step instead of the upkeep. I don't want them to have consider, but I don't want them to be able to counter my Pixis, and I figure worst case scenario they have a blind good card, second card underneath. I know I've already gotten rid of 2 Flame of Anor, so I only have to worry about 2 more and a max, a Snapcaster, and a Odawara. I looked at their list online for their blue-red control, and they had Jace the Mind Sculptor. I didn't realize the cage was going to be so important. I just figured I'd play it out, but it turns out they do want to counter it because they do run Snapcasters in their build. Yeah, so they have to have a good card underneath the Spell Pierce for that to work. And it turns out it's just a Steam Vents. I'm okay. So there is the Snapcaster there on top. Now notice I used the Lantern instead of the Pixis, and I'm okay with them having a second Tide Binder. Yeah. So really now I'm just playing around 2 Tidebinders. Um, there's a needle. And I did look at their list online, saw the Jason Mind Sculptors in it for their blue-red. So yeah, that's what I name. It turns out they're not playing Jaces. I didn't want to hold it though because I didn't want to keep taking damage off of Orcish Bowmasters. So I figured now was the time to do it. And I figured they probably have more Jaces than they have Otawaras. So I was more concerned about Jace. Yeah, I'm okay with taking a little bit of damage. And yeah, I figured I'd draw mill rocks faster than they'll draw answers. And that is the case. So they have a Snapcaster. I don't want them to have it, so now I'm going to draw out their Tidebinders. So I can mill it anyways. I do have to mill this Archmage Charm though. So right here is the closest I really had to worry. And again, I do it during their draw step if I'm not, or upkeep. Yeah. And I figured chances are they don't have another snap and they don't have another flame on top out of the 29 cards that they had. And go ahead and suspend that. And I'm trying to wait until my opponent's upkeep to do all this because I want them, if they're going to fetch, I want to make them fetch during their upkeep. And they do fetch to try to save their flame. And I end up milling a Snapcaster instead. And so they're going to get the Spell Pierce. Yeah. And again, doing this during their, yeah. Not too worried about Otawara because they don't really have anything to return that'll hurt me, that'll win. And I have the Profane Tutor coming off. Yeah, Tidebinder if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, oh yeah, Otawara on their own Tidebinder to counter the Profane Tutor. Now this does mean that I have my Pixis back, which is going to help a lot with this Archmage Charm on top. And really, I wanted to grab another Millrock anyways. And now, from this point, the game is pretty much set. I'm just going to hit play. Don't want him to have Consider. Don't want him to have Lorien. Island is fine. And there's the last flame there, if I'm not mistaken. Not too worried about Scalding Tarn. I am being extremely careful about what I mill here. Because they do have a lot of really good targets in their deck for cards that will help them out. Yeah. So get my last shredder. Um, yeah. So here, I use the Assassin's Trophy on the Tidebinder, and I was doing what I can to make sure that I hit the right Tidebinder. Oh, interesting. Looks like MTGO is bugged, and it's just playing through. There we go. Yeah, just gained some life. They only have 6 cards left, and they are not drawing anything good off of this. And that's going to be game. Um, all right. My opponent does play it out. I'm assuming to try to time me out. Unfortunately, so on this computer specifically, MTGO kind of runs a little bit slow. I'm not sure why. It has, I mean, I'm on a LAN connection, but whatever. But anyways, we go to game 2. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, this is from later on. Okay. So I keep this hand. It's got natural luck, 2 hand disruption, and a needle. So I'm thinking this is extremely good against a control deck. So I go for it. I ended up seeing their entire deck last game, so I know they don't have a Ragavan. Okay, so oh yeah, they mold to 5. So again, Flame of Anor is what I pick. I do have to worry about the 2 considers. This also tells me that they're on 2 lands here, so they're probably gonna have to use the considers very carefully here. So they play the Hall. So I play the Lantern first to see what their top card is. And it is a Snapcaster. I don't want them to have that. So there's a trick that I can do here. I know that chances are my opponent did not get exactly Counterspell off of their draw. So my plan here is I play the Pixis and I wait for their upkeep to use the Pixis. Then they're probably going to want to use Consider to draw the Snapcaster because they really want that Snapcaster to flashback Flame of Anor in the long run. So what that does is they can't cast a Snapcaster and get Flame of Anor back. They can, I mean, they might not even be able to cast Snapcaster. um, so when I do that, so that means that I'm going to next turn get to Thoughtseize their hand, get the Snapcaster out of their hand anyways, or whatever else they drew, maybe the Consider or whatever, it doesn't matter. And then their clock is so slow that the Lantern Lock with Pixis and Profane Tutor should win the game from there. So I'm waiting until their upkeep. I go to mill, force them to use the Consider. They draw the Snapcaster. And here they go to use the other Consider because they want that land. And that does mean that I get to exile the Alpine Moon. And they draw Bowmasters. And again, Bowmasters is a very slow clock against me. So now I get to Thoughtseize. And the blind draw was an Archmage's Charm. So now I'll get the Profane Tutor, and really I do still have to worry about Snap. And see, this Consider's gone, so it's just Snap and Bowmasters. Now they're 2 lands away from flashing back Flame of Anor. So I know I sided in a Cage, a Nihil Spell Bomb, and a what's the name of that card? The Lantern that exiles a graveyard. I forget the name. So I know that chances are I'm going to hit one of those before my opponent hits the lands that they need to flashback Flame of Anor, or I'm going to hit a discard spell. So chances are I'm winning from here. Yeah. So second shredder, which is great. They let me exile their Otawara instead of doing the Snapcaster Consider to get Otawara because they're trying to get Snapcaster to do Flame of Anor. So here I grabbed the Urza Saga out of those choices. Now the reason why is because I don't need a bridge and they don't have any removal. And Urza Saga will let me get the Graveyard Hate so that Snapcaster doesn't matter. So chances are I'm going to be able to, um, I can let them draw the Snapcaster. I can make blockers with the Urza Saga, and I'll get Grafdigger's Cage to shut off the Snapcasters before they can actually use them. And I do still have a Profane Tutor on suspend. So yeah, they'll counter the Profane Tutor, which they really need to, because otherwise I could just grab a discard spell. And if they don't counter the discard spell, well, they don't know what I can grab, but discard spell would be pretty bad. I'm thinking they're thinking I might grab an Extirpate. But so now I have blockers. Excuse me. Again, still not worried about the counter spells because they can't counter the Saga tokens. Yeah, so the opponent's going to Snapcaster to try to get this Flame of Anor with Consider. That's not going to work because I have multiple no rocks here. I don't want them to have the Preordain either because that lets them dig 3 cards deep. So they do get another Consider or whatever's underneath it, which is still not bad for me because now I've got a pretty good clock on them. They put Consider in the yard and they get a random lightning bolt. Engineered explosives on top. Notice I've been holding this needle for quite a while. I didn't want to just name random crap with it. I thought it was in my opening hand, but I made a mistake there. So now this is going to let me go get the Grafdigger's Cage. Make a massive dude. Needle on Engineered Explosives. And that's when the opponent was like, it says, fortunate it's a compliment. And now I'm going to force my opponent to start blocking. Come on, MTGO, you can do it. Okay. Really, I could have used Pixis there, but because I didn't need the other needle. But it is another artifact, and I think I named Otawara with this. But my mistake there is I forgot that I'd milled the other one. Or I milled it already, and I don't think they ran two. I don't know. Yeah, they have to counter that because these guys are going to be 10-10s otherwise. I do know that they still have these in hand. So I'm going to force the block here. And I'm okay with them drawing Bowmasters. I don't care about that card. Because they can block, but it's not going to do anything. Go to attacks, force them to block with both, and my opponent realizes that like they are dead now. That even if they block with both, next turn there's no way they're going to be able to block all three, so they concede. So the important thing there, I think, was in that early game, using the Pixis during their upkeep to force them to try to use Consider to draw the Snapcaster, and then knowing that their what threats were most important because they're a slower deck. Um, they are still the beatdown, but their Bowmasters don't really draw them any extra cards. It's just basically like a 2/2 bear against me, maybe some blockers. Um, and the big thing was Flame of Anor and timing the Mill Rocks. Um, if I had timed the Mill Rocks any differently, I'm pretty sure I would have lost. But yeah, that's it. Let's see.